The education system was a ticking time bomb long before President Trump stepped in to defuse it. Decades of progressive indoctrination, plummeting test scores, and bureaucratic bloat were already destroying American education from the inside out. Years of failed policies had reduced our schools to indoctrination centers, not learning institutions. Test scores were in free fall, with reading and math reaching historic lows. Children were being programmed, not educated. Parents watching horror as their kids learned everything except how to think critically. Well, now Donald Trump's team is performing emergency surgery on a system that was bleeding out, with Secretary McMahon preparing to completely dismantle the Department of Education. This is not just reform, it's a rescue mission, and we have all the details. Now, America's education system isn't the only thing suffering from chronic disease. Your blood pressure is under siege too. Nearly half of U.S. adults face high blood pressure, mirroring the systematic breakdown that we're seeing in our schools. Just as our education system needs a total reset, your health demands immediate intervention. Now, boostwithgary.com, there's a formula there. It's all natural to manage blood pressure using ingredients that attack the root cause. White mulberry leaf and cinnamon bark powder help reverse insulin resistance and reduce inflammation. And get it up to 40% off at boostwithgary.com. Take control before it's too late. So let's dive into what's going on at the Department of Education. Shutdown, shock, rattling American education. Trump's cabinet tells Congress the Department of Education is on the chopping block officially. Trillions spent with little to show, and power poised to boomerang back to parents and states. We're going to break it all down. Let's go. Okay, so what do we got here? We got the executive order clash. Trump directing the Secretary McMahon to take all necessary steps to shutter the Department of Education. Senators demand proof. She even asked counsel first. She insists closure will be lawful, promises a memo by Friday, where critics cry epic executive overreach. Let's check in on that hearing.
The president instructed you to take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the Department of Education. Did you check with your counsel or legal advisors as to whether or not you had authority to accomplish that request?
The president's executive order and his direction to me was to take those steps to lawfully shut down the Department of Education and to work with Congress to do that.
I understand what you said, but his quote was, take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the Department of Education. It was not, as you suggest, from the reading of his quote and his executive order, inclusive of consistent with the law. But that's your interpretation of what he said?
I would like to look at it again and get back to you, but I do believe he said to lawfully close down the Department of Education. At least let me rephrase and say that is clearly his direction to me.
The president instructed you
lawfully. Okay. Congress cooperation push. McMahon vows to reroute Title I and IDEA dollars straight to the states, sharing best practices to prove D.C.'s bureaucracy obsolete. Unmistakable transparency, she insists, will make the shutdown politically irresistible.
We both know and understand that the Department of Education cannot be closed unless Congress votes to do that. So my goal when I came on board, and he asked me how I thought we could do that, and I said my goal would be to work with Congress so that we could have transparent programs. I would like to, at the end of this program that I'm working on, as we try to bring up our test scores and work with our local states to bring education back to the states, to make sure that states have best practices and the tools to deliver those best practices. And so by sharing them with Congress, I would hope that Congress would look at them and say, eventually, I believe that this is going to be in the best interest of our students. This is not taking away funding. This is having funding go to the states for Title 1A, for IDEA. That is continuing. It may flow through in a different tranche.
Okay.
We both know and understand.
$1 trillion question. Lawmakers tally $3 trillion poured into the Department of Education since 1980, while reading and math scores still flatline. McMahon argues that slicing the red tape lets every dollar reach the classrooms instead of bureaucrats, and the math finally adds up for kids.
either flatline. Since 1980, taxpayers have spent nearly $3 trillion on federal education funding. Per pupil spending in public schools has skyrocketed since then, yet test scores, as has been mentioned many times, have failed to improve meaningfully. Reading and math scores have either flatlined or declined according to the National Assessment of Educational Progress. Does streamlining bureaucracy at the Department of Education mean students and teachers will receive less funding, or does it actually ensure that more of each dollar reaches the classroom?
More of each dollar will reach the classroom because we're eliminating a lot of bureaucratic red tape that takes time and money to comply with.
Thank you.
And the scores still tank. NAEP's 2024 Nations Report Card shows reading at a 50-year low. Math frozen despite record federal cash. 2 more points vanished nationally, widening the gulf. Furious parents ask, what did the Department of Education's billions actually buy beyond bloated offices? Reading scores fall to new low, fueled by declines for struggling students. This results reality check. A Maryland senator concedes decades of reform failed our students. McMahon brands the collapse of once-in-a-generation reset, pledging a bipartisan blueprint before the Department of Education powers down.
86. I don't think this agency can be shut down. I don't think the will of the people, as reflected by the Congress, is going to affect that end. So, I mean, I think you've been very articulate. I care deeply about this. As I told you, there are 86 Judith P. Hoyer Early Childhood Education Centers in our state, where she brought everybody together, full service, not stovepipe, not you're a teacher, you're a nurse, you're a social service, you help parents have housing. She brought them together. We have 86 of those centers. And we need to bring America together in saying we're not accomplishing an objective we all know is critically important, and that is making sure that every one of our children is not a cost to us, but a contributor to the welfare of our country. Then America will be great.
Well said. I certainly appreciate that. The fact is, sir, with all due respect, we have failed with everything that we've put in place, with programs of the best of intentions, of working together, and we've not done it well enough. We have failed our students to look at these scores. We have to do something different. I definitely want to work with Congress because that is the only way I think that we can achieve our goals is working with Congress, and I look forward to that.
I mean, the fact that the head of the Department of Education, Linda McMahon, saying, we have failed our children, right there in that committee hearing, speaks volumes. Yes, something different needs to happen. You gotta change course. For all these years, billions of dollars flushed away with flatline scores. It's embarrassing. Rural funding assurance, a farm district lawmaker fears Title I cuts. McMahon vows dollars will stay totally intact. Touts a lightning fast FAFSA relaunch and insists aid desk now serve borrowers, not padding DC headcounts that starve classrooms.
Funding is.
Madam Secretary, I know you've addressed it multiple times today, but just to put my constituents at ease, I represent a mostly rural district, and I know there's been a lot of fear-mongering out there about Title I funding. Can you help me put their minds at ease that those dollars will find a way to get down to the rural districts who don't always have access to a different option for their children?
Title I funding is, Title I-A funding is totally intact.
Wonderful. I'll be sure to let them know that. Last year I actually questioned Secretary Cardona on his handling of providing more administrative staff to work on student loan forgiveness as opposed to the disastrous FAFSA rollout that we were dealing with. I come from higher education, so I know how detrimental that can be for higher ed, and especially for parents and students trying to figure out what college they're going to go to. So can you kind of put our minds at ease that what is the department doing to ensure that the federal student aid offices are returning to its focus, to its core mission, which is serving students, administering aid, and supporting successful loan repayment, making sure that they're doing their jobs?
Yeah, well, we've spent quite a bit of effort, with FSA and with the FAFSA program as well. That kind of went off the rails, so it's back on. It is up and running and ready. The current year is proceeding as it should. We are getting the year after that, and the year after that, ready to be in place, and we've made great strides.
Madam Secretary, I know you've...
Campus hate crackdown. Department of Education warns elite colleges letting mobs chant death to Israel, protect students, or kiss hundreds of millions in federal grants goodbye. She vows equal protection on every quad, no exceptions, and no delays as compliance teams descend.
And the president has made it very clear that he does not condone any kind of discrimination, racial, and especially we've seen it religious. We've seen it across our college campuses, some of the most elite in the country, and we took very strong and very decisive action against those universities who clearly were not protecting Jewish students against anti-Semitism. Against them, when they were anti-Semitic, those that were attacking them. When you've seen students barricaded in the library and others pounding on the glass, going, death to Jews, death to Israel, death to the United States, that is unacceptable in our college campuses. And we reacted. We reacted to Columbia. We first did not, that happened, this incident happened at Columbia. And I met with the president of Columbia. I've had 2 conversations now with the current president of Columbia. We've talked about things that we need to do at those universities. We want to be able to be supportive, but those universities, albeit they're private, do receive federal funding. We have leverage to withhold some of that federal funding or to cancel some of the grants, and we will do that unless it can be proven that these colleges and universities are going to respect all rights. The president has made it very...
I can't even believe this is a conversation being had. They're chanting death to America on college campuses. I mean, of course their funding should be pulled, without question. She mentioned Columbia. The review hits. The Department of Education, HHS, and GSA open a tri-agency probe of Columbia's grants after anti-Semitic chaos paralyzed learning. She warns institutions failing Jewish students will lose federal dollars. Elite ivory towers are now on notice. Here's the headline: federal agencies to review Columbia's contracts after failure to protect Jewish students. The mental health meltdown. Senators scorch a $1 billion counseling cut amid post-lockdown trauma. McMahon concedes crisis. Promises talks with Sandy Hook families, yet defends the big reshuffle as prioritizing outcomes while millions of students still
are struggling with I wanted to hit quickly 2 topics. Mental health cuts. The administration cut $1 billion. Well, actually, let's put it this way. Just stop paying $1 billion allocated for mental health service professional demonstration grant and school-based mental health services grant. Do you recognize that our school children are struggling with mental health? Many of our children are struggling with mental health.
I think mental health is
Do you recognize our students are struggling?
A critical component around the country.
Our students.
Some students, yes.
Yes. It was made worse during the time of COVID. It is exacerbated by school shootings. I noted that you said you were going to meet with parents and children who had struggled and suffered the trauma of school shootings. I've done that over the years, sadly. I've had the opportunity to meet with Uvalde parents, with Parkland parents, with Sandy Hook parents. Are you meeting with parents and children, students in those places?
I have only in Sandy Hook because that happened in my state of Connecticut.
Yes.
So I have met with some of those parents shortly after, and I can't imagine a more horrible tragedy than that.
How about the students, to see how they're affected?
I've not talked to many of the students, no.
Do you plan to do that?
Sure, I would enjoy doing that.
How soon can you do that? Because you did talk about doing that on CNN recently.
I'm not sure how quickly, but
You're the secretary. You could do whatever you want because, after all, you're cutting all this funding. You've got time.
I've got a lot of responsibilities to do, and we're going to focus on the things that I think are going to ensure that we're providing equal education for all of the students in our country.
Wow, you're cutting all this funding. You must have a lot of free time on your hand. Robots rescue math, public-private robotics kits ignite middle school STEM passions, turning abstract numbers into hands-on wins. Governor Sununu's New Hampshire pilot lifts test scores. McMahon hints nationwide rollout if Department of Education exits. Real results real fast.
Students that if, Madam Secretary, I appreciate your emphasis on reading, and I think that is really very important. It certainly opens up a whole opportunity for students. Another area where there's an opportunity for students that if they don't make the most of that opportunity, it really limits their capabilities, and that's in middle school math. And by that I mean if someone engages in middle school and learns math and is competent in math, that opens up doorways for math, for science at the upper levels. If they don't, they consider themselves not a math person and disengage, and we lose a lot of people who could be very strong in the STEM fields. I wonder if that's something that you and the department could factor in terms of innovative partnerships with states as well as the private sector, because I do believe math and science students are going to be vital to compete in the years to come.
Well, that is, I would like to see more public-private partnerships, especially clearly at the state level. As I have I visited a few schools now, and I have seen some of the private partnerships where the companies are coming in and they're bringing, let's take, for instance, one of the ones that I saw just recently, robotics into schools. I went into a school classroom where kids were not very much engaged in math, and suddenly they had the opportunity now to work with these robot components and these robot kits. In fact, I think former Governor Sununu up in New Hampshire actually activated one of these programs in New Hampshire, that the company provided these kits, and the kids who suddenly took these kits, they had to have motor skill coordination. They had to learn what the spatial relationship was to attach all of the parts. And so then they would have competitions. And suddenly, when they had to figure out, I need a 2-inch piece for this or a 1.5 centimeter for that, whatever the math they were looking at, they suddenly were making that connection with the math because they were doing something with hands-on skills. I think we can just look at how we're teaching things differently and looking at a lot of those projects that are being brought in by the private sector. They get
Musk staffing mystery. Lawmakers probe whether Elon Musk's shadow Doge crew axed 1,300 Department of Education staffers before McMahon arrived. She confirms the layoffs predated her, admits 3 to 4 Musk meetings, yet can't verify the crew's education chops. Transparency clock ticking.
that restructure.
So you fired 1,300 people. Another 600 people took Elon Musk's deferred resignation offer. Did you fire the people or did Doge fire the people? I'm not completely clear on that.
Most of that restructuring happened under the acting.
Short term, did you fire or did Doge fire?
Well, I'm going to tell you who I fired.
I know, but that's why I'm trying to get short term questions. It's one or the other, right?
You're using our time.
Yeah.
So we most of that was done before I came on board. However,
Doge.
the decisions in the department I run the department. Doge does not run the
Okay,
department.
so you didn't answer the question. Did you fire them or did Doge? It's real simple.
A good majority of that happened before I came on board.
Okay, and by a good majority, 2/3, 3/4?
But yes, I'd say.
Okay, fair. Okay. And how many times did you meet with Elon Musk
I've
about
met
firing?
with Mr. Musk probably 3 to 4 times now.
Okay,
Not including when I was on the transition committee and had several opportunities to speak with him.
sure. And then if I understand it right, on your Department of Education employee roster, you have right now at least is about 16 Doge employees. Is that correct right now, working with you?
I can get back to you to the exact number. I don't think it's that high. But we
Okay.
do have, they are employees those that we have are employees of the federal
And
government.
when you did their background checks to see how they're qualified about education, how many had undergraduate degrees and how many had graduate degrees in
I
education?
can get back to you on that.
So you fired.
The battle lines. Fiscal year 25 budget still parks $18.6 billion in high poverty schools, but Project 2025 swaps strict oversight for no strings block grants. Teachers warn that 2.8 million kids could lose a lifeline if Congress greenlights the handoff. Department of Education budget summary. Orwellian accusation echoes. A senator warns that shuttering the Department of Education drags America back to unequal schools, waving Project 2025 papers and claiming charter profiteers crave an uneducated electorate. McMahon fires back that results, not rhetoric, rule.
In God's name, do you want to shut? You're all following the book, that book. Too bad that one wasn't banned. And yet,
Wow.
privatizing is really the other ambition. An uneducated electorate and profit and privatization of our education system. Do you promise us that that isn't your ambition?
That clearly is not my ambition. I think I stated that very well today.
Then why in God's name do you want to shutter it? Why don't you want to protect kids with disabilities? Why don't you want to protect kids who have been every decade denied equal access simply because of how much their parents make, the zip code they live in, the color of their skin?
Oh, wow.
Why are you shuttering a department that's supposed to lift up those children?
Because those programs don't have to flow through the Department of Education, and they
Can flow through the state. I was the state legislator. That's called shift and shaft. I've spoken with the governor of Pennsylvania. They can't pick up the tab anymore for education of our students. Not to mention, it would be inequitable by state, by state, by state. Why are you in this job at all?
Wow.
If you don't have a dedication to the future of our children, why are you in this job?
I too am a mother and a grandmother, and I want the best for my family going forward,
Vouchers.
for my grandchildren, for my great-grandchildren, and I hope to leave a legacy that we have established best practices for education that all the states can use. That would be a great legacy to be able to leave, to be able to show states these are some of the things that they can do. I think states have to look at their budgets.
Madam Secretary, the legacy you will be leaving is that I shut down the Department of Education. You're all following the book.
That's
that
one
book.
hell of a legacy. The privatization showdown looms. A ranking Democrat calls the plan the shift and shaft, says states can't shoulder special ed costs. Is this the same clip?
Before Secretary McMahon, it's alarming that you and the president want to turn that clock back. You take us back to a time before any federal oversight of education, before many of the programs that guarantee free and equal access to education for all Americans. You said as much in your testimony. After all the Department of Education's work to ensure equal access to education, you're embarking on the department's final mission? You intend to put yourself out of a job? That's a little jarring to me. If you were a pediatric oncologist, I'd welcome that. Let's get you out of a job through cures, through healing, through ending of pediatric cancer. But ending a department that is supposed to oversee the education of our very youngest, to guide their future? Have you taken the time to educate yourself about this history? I'd encourage you, go ask students who attended school back then. Black students, brown students, students with disabilities, students from poor families. What was access like for them before the Department of Education? Frankly, eliminating the Department of Education to me is rather Orwellian. The president and his administration don't want an educated populace. Why don't we just go back to the book 1984 if it hasn't been banned? It's clear to me, this administration wants an uneducated electorate so that Mr. Trump and his courtiers can control thought, therefore control votes, and control the population. I'll note a secondary measure here that is going on. The increase in funding for charter schools. We know that charter schools originally were supposed to be incubators of the best ideas, great practices to be brought back into the public school education system so that every kid had an access to such things. But this administration and you, who want to put yourself out of a job, following the playbook, page 319 of Project 2025, first sentence, shutter the Department of Education. Secretary
Oh, yes, it's long overdue. Follow the truth unfiltered. If these receipts armed you against bureaucratic spin, follow the Next News Network. Our White House hard press creds grill power players daily, and we track the DOE's fate to the last bell. Oh, yeah, baby. Shut it down. Here we have from the Rapid Response 47. This was published 17 hours ago. Education Secretary McMahon on civil rights investigation into Fairfax County Public Schools in Virginia over admissions process discrimination.
Because I'd like to commend the Attorney General in Virginia and Governor Youngkin for the work that they have done, and I'll let Governor Youngkin talk more about that. But I just want to say that the Department of Education is launching our own investigation, our civil rights investigation into the practices of admissions of Thomas Jefferson High School in Fairfax, Virginia. And because this cannot be tolerated, it won't be tolerated. The president said from day one he will not tolerate any kind of discrimination in admissions in our universities or across our country. I'd like to...
So the Department of Education's collapse, it was inevitable. Trump is just delivering the final merciful blow to a system that was already dead on its feet. Decades of bureaucratic poison had already destroyed our children's future long before this administration. But here's the question that should keep every parent up at night. What will it take to truly rebuild education from the ground up? We want to hear your unfiltered thoughts in the comments below. So drop them. And how can we resurrect real learning in America? You want to show your fighting spirit? Well, head over to shop.nextnewsnetwork.com and grab some gear that says you are not backing down.